Maverick News presents The Rick Walker Show. Defrag your mind.
Good evening, Maverick family. Good evening, new viewers. The world is watching, even though we've been banned from Facebook. We're in Facebook jail. I guess they'll let us back on at some point, but this afternoon, just while I was messaging people, suddenly I wasn't able to message people anymore. I was talking to two people on Facebook, messaging, and then suddenly I was blocked, and I was told that I'd been sending too many messages. So they blocked access to the messenger. And then I received another message. You've been blocked from posting. The reason? Copyright things, not really clear, kind of ambiguous. So we're down for at least the next 3 days on Facebook. Congratulations, Maverick News. You've been banned on Facebook. So I'll take that as a badge of honor. I've been very careful overall, I think. And Facebook really has sort of left us alone until just recently, but we're banned. And appropriate, really, because we are going to be talking about Bill C-18 tonight. We're going to talk about how the federal government in Canada is pulling all advertising from Facebook because Facebook is refusing to comply with Bill C-18 and pay mainstream legacy media for news content on their platform. So they're just going to take all news content off. And maybe this is why they took us off. Maybe this is just a prelude of things to come. Maybe this is just them getting ready to permanently deplatform us from Facebook, Instagram, because we're news oriented. I don't know. I can tell you that they've been hammering us for the past month, at least, maybe more, over copyright things for past videos that have no basis in reality. They claim we're using music that we're not allowed to use, and it's just not true. Because I'm careful about the music that we do use and the specific songs. I was able to identify some of those specific songs, and no, it's just not the case. Anyway, we'll get into it more. What else do we have for you tonight? The judge has ordered the release of more Mar-a-Lago search warrant information in the Trump classified docs case. And also on the censorship front, a judge has ruled the Biden administration probably did trample on free speech on social media during the pandemic. And so a preliminary injunction has ordered federal agencies to refrain from pressuring social media companies on the issue of censorship. So we'll talk about that too. It's all connected. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is being monitored by live television or TV to like live video cameras. A lot of people over there worried about what's going to happen. We're getting reports that people around that nuclear power plant are evacuating, that there may even have been recommendations that they leave the area. We're hearing that power to the plant the power lines to the plant have been completely severed now. And that is leading to concerns that there might actually be an attack coming that could result in a nuclear disaster. We're going to go to the White House briefly and find out what is going on with the East Palestine train derailment and the cleanup efforts there. We'll hear from Vladimir Zelensky about everything going on the war front. And sharks off the coast of New York and beaches, and people are freaking out. And I guess there have been some shark bites associated with these spottings. 50 sharks spotted at one beach off New York's Long Island. And there was also a fin spotted at a beach in Florida. We have some interesting perspectives to share with you on that tonight. And I'll comment briefly this evening as well on the record-breaking temperatures worldwide that have led to the hottest day ever recorded in human history. Dun, 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 dun. Plus, I can also tell you tonight, and this is breaking news, you may have even heard it here first, that the federal government and Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Fiat, Alfa Romeo, Peugeot, a number of other brands, they have now reached a deal to save that battery plant in Windsor, Ontario for electric vehicles. Big news, a lot of jobs on the line, and a whole lot of tax dollars. Billions of tax dollars on the line down there. Federal government ready to cough it all up and spit it all out at the big corporations in order to facilitate a shift, a complete transformation, an electric vehicle transformation, an electric vehicle revolution. Don't go away. We'll be right back, and we'll start digging in to all of these stories when we return.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
I'm back, and we're going to talk first about Bill C-18, which is now the law. What does Bill C-18 do? There's a lot of confusion around it, and some people say that it's a censorship bill, and in an indirect way it is, because it gives the Canadian Radio Telecommunications Commission, which is a government regulatory body that oversees radio, television stations. It now gives them similar authority over the internet. It imposes Canadian content rules insofar as they want to, through the Online Streaming Act and Bill C-18, they want to force the social media giants like Facebook, Google, Twitter, Instagram, all of them, YouTube, to pay the mainstream legacy media for the news content that they carry on their social media platforms. Well, Meta has taken the strongest stand on this, and they've said, no way, not going to do it. So the federal government today in Canada, and the world is watching all of this, by the way, they absolutely are, because what's playing out here is really a prelude of things to come globally, in the view of many. So Canada's Heritage Minister, Pablo Rodriguez, today said the federal government is going to suspend all of its advertising on Facebook and Instagram. He says that Mark Zuckerberg's company is being unreasonable and irresponsible because of the decision to pull Canadian news from its platforms in response to the Online News Act. So the federal government's Bill C-18 or Online News Act was passed about 2 weeks ago, and it forces Google and Meta to pay media outlets for content that they share, preview, or otherwise repurpose on their platforms. But of course, it's the mainstream media that posts the stuff on there just like we do. It's not like Meta or Google post it for them, although they do provide the publishing platform. So because of the new legislation, Facebook and Google have said, well, we're not going to run news content anymore then, because we're not going to pay for it. It's not worth it to us. And Google has said that it will block news for Canadians on its search engine when the law comes into effect in about 6 months. The regulatory process is still being completed, so there is still some time before all of this plays out. But I think even what we're seeing here on this platform tonight gives us an indication of what's coming down. So Rodriguez made this announcement along with NDP House Leader Peter Julian and the Bloc Québécois heritage critic Martin Champoux. And he said that all the major parties, except, of course, the Conservatives, and 2/3 of all the MPs in the House are standing up for a free, independent, nonpartisan, fact-based, and thriving media. Well, Trudeau also today, during a media scrum, said that it's not just a question of legislation, it's about democracy. Well, I understand the intent. Well, the surface intent, maybe not the true intent. The justification that the federal government is using here is that to preserve Canadian culture, to preserve Canadian democracy, to make sure that our systems function properly, and the Canadians are properly served with Canadian news, they need to ensure the viability of mainstream legacy media. And with all of the advertising dollars shifting to social media platforms away from television, radio stations, this is the government's way of trying to, I guess, provide some sort of equity, reverse equity almost, level the playing field for the mainstream legacy media, which has not been able to figure out how to survive in this new media environment, this new social media reality, where television and radio stations, those technologies, those platforms have become not maybe obsolete, but not cutting edge anymore, not as powerful. Yeah, maybe they are obsolete. I mean, I don't know. Video on the internet has largely replaced television. I personally don't watch much television myself anymore. And I hate to say that because I still have a show running on television. Not this show, but another show. Anyway, let's go to the news conference, shall we? And listen to what the Heritage Minister had to say.
Monsieur Proulx, salut tout le monde, merci d'être là. Il y a quelques semaines, la loi sur les nouvelles en ligne a reçu la sanction royale. Ça découle d'un processus
explaining what the government is planning to do. No more ad dollars for the social media giants.
Rigoureux également. Alors, tous les parlementaires, députés et sénateurs se sont mis ensemble pour étudier le projet de loi. Et à la suite de ce travail rigoureux-là, vous avez 2/3 des députés, 2/3 des sénateurs qui ont voté en faveur du projet de loi. Alors, pourquoi? Parce que, c'est la bonne chose à faire parce que c'est ce que les Canadiens demandent. Aussi parce qu'au cours des dernières années, près de 500 médias d'information ont fermé leurs portes. On parle ici de stations de radio, de télévision locale, de journaux. Et derrière tout ça, ben, c'est du vrai monde qui perd leur job. C'est aussi du vrai monde qui n'a plus accès à de l'information locale qui les touche.
Sorry, he's still in
directement.
French. He'll flip over. Here we
Canadians
go.
are seeing their access to quality, fact-based, independent news disappear. And we all know that this means, what it means that it's hurting our democracy. It means that this is bad for our democracy. Et les Canadiens de partout au pays, que ce soit chez M. Julien, chez M. Champoux, chez nous, partout, ils nous ont demandé d'agir. Ils nous ont clairement demandé d'agir et c'est exactement ce qu'on fait. So, once again, we're standing here together with my colleagues from all major parties except one, representing two-thirds of all the MPs in the House to stand up for a free, independent, non-partisan, fact-based and thriving press. We're standing up for Canada together. Récemment, Google et Meta ont rendu clair leur intention de retirer les nouvelles de leur plateforme.
These days, even facts seem to be something people question.
We're talking about two huge platforms that are using content from our journalists, from our news organizations, profiting off their ads, and watching journalism decline as they eat up huge revenue. As a matter of fact, 80% of the ad revenue is going to those two companies. In 2022, last year, that represented almost $10 billion. On parle ici de plateformes qui bénéficient du statu quo,
because it's a far more advanced platform and they can track consumers that they advertise to. They can't do that with television or radio.
Guys, I think it's clear, status quo, not working. All we want, all Canadians want, is for these platforms to contribute their fair share, not more, not less, just what's fair. So we've met with both Google and Meta multiple times to better understand their concerns. We believe we have a path forward and we're willing to continue talking with the platforms without going into details because we don't negotiate in public, but we're deeply convinced that Google's concerns will be resolved through regulations. In the meantime, and this is very clear, the platforms don't have any obligations under the Act, none. And despite this, Facebook has decided to be unreasonable, irresponsible, and started blocking news. This is why today we are announcing the Government of Canada will be suspending advertising on Facebook and Instagram. Alors aujourd'hui, on annonce que le gouvernement du Canada suspend
they go to war with Facebook and Instagram with Meta
et Instagram. Google, on the other hand, has been open to finding a solution. And this is exactly what Canadians are expecting. So today we're calling on both platforms to stay at the table, work through the regulatory process with us, contribute their fair share, and keep news on their platform. It's good for the platforms, good for news in Canada, good for Canadians, good for our democracy. You all know by now that the world is watching. This is why in the following days we're going to be talking to different countries. Some of them are preparing their own bills on the issue, different bills, same challenges. The platforms know that we're at the table, we're ready to talk to them, we're open to discuss, but we're not open to doing nothing. Status quo is not an option. Alors, aujourd'hui, mes collègues du Bloc, du NPD, moi-même, on parle d'une même voix. The Canadian Parliament, which is elected by the people of Canada, has just passed the Online News Act. As a government, we want to make room for dialogue and solutions rather than threats and confrontation. Je pense que c'est un plan raisonnable et essentiel pour l'avenir de la presse, qui est dans le meilleur intérêt des médias, des plateformes,
well, it's
de tous les
confrontational.
Canadiens. Merci. Monsieur Champoux.
Shall we listen to a little of this guy?
Merci, Monsieur le ministre.
Okay, just a little.
Ça fait 20 ans que les géants du Web s'imposent dans notre paysage culturel et médiatique, qu'on les laisse prendre une place dans nos vies,
He's speaking
à un point
French.
tel où ils sont quasiment
In case you
devenus
hadn't
des
noticed,
services
Someone
essentiels.
suggested he might
Mettons
be
quelque chose
speaking
au clair,
Russian.
nous aimons les médias
But
sociaux.
no, I think it's
font partie de notre vie.
French.
À tous les jours, on les consulte pour à peu
I
près
don't know if
tout et
he'll flip to
n'importe quoi.
English or
Trouver
not.
des recettes, prendre des nouvelles de ma tante Aline, trouver
He
des
might
idées de
not.
vacances, mais aussi pour se divertir et s'informer. En fait, les médias sociaux sont devenus pour un grand nombre de Québécois et de Canadiens la
I'm not sure.
principale source d'information. C'est là qu'on trouve nos nouvelles du jour. Et la plupart des gens se
Okay, let's just stop. Too much French on a all English platform here. So That's where that's at. The fight continues. Who has more power, the government or Mark Zuckerberg? I have an idea. Instead of forcing Google and Meta to pay, and other social media platforms to pay for the news content, why don't they just make their own social media platform? They have all the techs, all the technology. They have all the technicians, they have smart people, right? And if people really, really want to watch their stuff, all they have to do is just make a website, and people would go to it and look at it there. Let the market decide. Let the people decide what they want to watch. Just saying. Or let the federal government create its own government social media platform and see if people would go over there. Make it so good that people just can't resist it, and put all the mainstream legacy media on that. Why not? Why go through all this and force these guys to cough up the cash? Just make your own platform and compete for the ad dollars. Anybody think of that? Make it all Canadian all the time. 100% Canadian content. That ought to satisfy the sweet tooth for CanCon the Canadians have. Why don't they do that? Wouldn't that work? Wouldn't that be fantastic? And the advertisers would just flock to it, wouldn't they? They would flood it with ad dollars because they'd want to get behind it and support it. Instead of trying to beat the social media platforms and the people into submission with regulations and new laws, why don't you just provide a better service that's so darn good that people just can't resist it? How about that? Oh, I don't know. I don't think they're listening. Oh, well. An injunction has blocked the Biden administration from working with social media firms about protected speech. So a judge, this is yesterday, but it's certainly related to what we're talking about here, prohibited several federal agencies and officials of the Biden administration from working with social media companies about protected speech. So some are saying that this decision by the court is a blow to censorship. So this comes down from U.S. District Judge Terry Doughty of Louisiana, and he granted the injunction in response to a 2022 lawsuit that was brought by attorneys general in Louisiana and Missouri. So this lawsuit alleged that the federal government overreached while it was trying to convince social media companies to address postings that might result in vaccine hesitancy during the COVID-19 pandemic. Or, and this also applies to posts about elections, posts that could affect elections. So the judge cited substantial evidence of a far-reaching censorship campaign. And in his decision, he said that evidence produced thus far depicts an almost dystopian scenario. During the COVID-19 pandemic, a period perhaps best characterized by widespread doubt and uncertainty, the United States government seems to have assumed a role similar to an Orwellian Ministry of Truth. So Louisiana's Attorney General says the injunction prevents the administration from censoring the core political speech of ordinary Americans on social media. That coming from Attorney General Jeff Landry. The evidence in our case, he says, is shocking and offensive, with senior federal officials deciding that they could dictate what Americans can and cannot say on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other platforms about COVID-19, elections, criticism of the government, and more. So the Justice Department apparently is now reviewing the injunction and will evaluate its options in this case, according to a White House official who told mainstream legacy media that the case is groundbreaking. And what else do I have to tell you about this tonight? The administration, I know, has promoted. Well, let me just see here. I took some other notes. So the ruling lists several government agencies, including the Department of Health, Human Services, and the FBI, that are now prohibited by the injunction from discussions with social media companies aimed at encouraging, pressuring, or inducing any manner the removal, deletion, suppression, or reduction of content containing protected free speech. I would say this is significant. It is substantial. And administration lawyers say the government left it up to social media companies to decide what constituted misinformation and how to combat it. In one brief, they likened the lawsuit to an attempt to put a legal gag order on the federal government and suppress the speech of federal government officials under the guise of protecting the speech rights of others. So the plaintiffs in the lawsuit also included conservative website owner Jim Hoft. This lawsuit also accused the administration of using the possibility of favorable or unfavorable regulatory action to coerce social media platforms to squelch what it considered misinformation on things like masks and vaccines during the COVID-19 pandemic. There were other areas, too, that it touched on, including claims about election integrity, as we mentioned, and news stories that involved information about Hunter Biden's laptop. I don't think we've heard the last of this, but I would say this is a step in the right direction, folks. This is a little step toward restoration of actual free speech in the United States. It also shows that I think the public is getting a little bit tired of this stuff. Even the people who run the courts and the judges. And it shows how the government really has been manipulating these social media companies, which I've said for a long time are really not acting independently. They're really arm's length organizations of government. Yes, they may be privately owned corporations, but they are controlled by government through regulation, subsidies, and tax breaks in a variety of forms. It is corporatism. It is a form of corporate economic fascism. And that is why we've been having so much trouble over the past 3+ years in particular. Don't go away. More coming up when we return right after this.
Hello, world. Are you awake? Uniting humankind by liberating millions of minds at a time. Maverick News. The world is watching.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Okay, so before we move on to news beyond this social media flap, let's bring up Justin Trudeau, who provided his perspective on this, since I think this is actually, in many respects, his war on a bit of a personal level with Facebook, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, Instagram. Here's Justin Trudeau.
He believes there is a way forward with Google, but with Meta, as you've said, your government has now suspended all advertising. How far will your government go in taking on a company like Meta? What could be next?
This is not just a dispute over advertising, it's also a dispute over democracy. It's a question of recognizing the role that internet giants like Facebook, Meta, Google, and others have in our lives, and therefore a responsibility that they also wield. As we've said, we're continuing constructive conversations with Google. Unfortunately, Facebook has just refused to recognize any sort of responsibility it might have in contributing to a democracy that has, democracies in general that have contributed to its success as a company, as a corporation. So we're not backing down on this. This goes to the core of a free and informed society that is able to take responsible decisions in a democracy. Citizens need to have access to quality local news, to quality content, to quality journalism that is properly paid. And the fact that the media, that Facebook doesn't want to recognize the hard work of professional journalists across the country is something that undermines the very fabric of our democracy at a time where we're seeing democracy backslide around the world. So Canada and allies around the world are going to stand strong and demonstrate that we will not flinch in our defense of fundamental, foundational principles to democracy, like a free, quality, informed press.
Well, we don't get any federal government money or any provincial money or any municipal money. Here, we get no government money at all. We rely entirely on you, and we've been demonetized on YouTube. Interestingly, just a couple of weeks ago, they were saying that our Facebook platforms were eligible for monetization, then, which I didn't bite on, but then days later, they came back and slapped us with some penalties for community guideline violations. And now today we're banned off Facebook. So they're coming hard for us now. And I think I know why. It's because of some of the content we've been posting lately, which, yeah, it's a bit of a hot potato, some of it. I understand that. But part of the problem here is that the people who make these decisions, I think, are younger. They're not very well educated. Well, they have maybe a lot of education, but it's not quality education. They don't take enough time, I think, sometimes to watch enough content to fully understand the full context of these things that they become judge, jury, and executioner on with regard to the execution of censorship dictates that they rain down upon those of us who are peons from high above. So you've got a bunch of young people with a chip on their shoulder and way too much power making decisions about who gets to stay on the platform and who doesn't. And I think that's the case really across all these social media companies. A little too quick with the trigger to pull and deplatform people. And, you know, they're shooting themselves in the foot because, as I've said, over the last few months, they're making themselves irrelevant. They think they're so powerful that they're virtually untouchable, that they are so big that they will never lose their audiences. And they are so wrong. They treat their clients and their inventory. We're the inventory. The advertisers are their clients. And they treat us, the people who provide the inventory, honestly, at no cost to them, other than the platform itself. And yeah, they have expenses that way, hard costs. But in terms of content generation, they get it for free. And they profit from it because we willingly provide it to them and say, hey, please give us the audience. But they are wrong about how powerful they are. They are vulnerable. And you're seeing the erosion of their audiences in real time. Rumble, go subscribe on Rumble. That's how you get these guys. That's how you put them back in line and put them in their place. Vote for what you want by subscribing to this channel over on Rumble. Tell Justin Trudeau, no, we don't need your mainstream legacy media. Support this channel. Support the other people who use this platform to have a voice. Support yourself. Support this platform. Support our efforts to give you a voice through the call-in portions of the show, through the chat. Support the channel. You can donate at freedomreporters.com. We need your help. We're in a fight for free speech, freedom of media. And while Justin Trudeau sits there and says that it's the mainstream legacy media that is needed to provide the foundation for a democracy, he's missing the point, man. What you need is an independent media to form the foundation, to form a cornerstone of a foundation for democracy. Without that, you have nothing. If you have a mainstream legacy media that's controlled by social media because they don't want to get deplatformed, so they have to stay in line and follow all their rules just to get the money through monetization and a government program that compels social media platforms to give mainstream legacy media money, funding, by transferring ad dollars back over to them. Ad dollars that in pre-social media, in a pre-social media world, were pretty much theirs for the taking if they could convince the advertisers to advertise anywhere with them. But it's all shifted to social media now. You need an independent media, not a mainstream legacy media that also receives government funding to the tune of millions and millions of dollars every single year now. Even the privately owned corporate broadcasters in Canada receive government handouts. That absolutely influences the way news is covered, in particular political news. That affects the way they report on Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government and Jagmeet Singh and the New Democratic Party and on politics in general. It's not only the stories that they choose to cover, it's the stories they choose not to cover, the ones they choose to just ignore. And there's a lot of that. So I take issue with what the Prime Minister is saying. This is skewed. This is another form of control through social media companies, if these companies are compelled to give the money to these mainstream legacy media outlets. We need more independent journalism. We need to make that viable. Then the Canadian people, the American people, the world will be better served, properly served. Served by also true professional journalists, maybe not of the brand that Justin Trudeau prefers, but that's because they will come in a whole variety of different brands, like this platform and many others. So please consider supporting us here. Go support other independent journalism outlets as well. That's the path to a freer society. Freedom of speech, free media, independent, free media. That's what we work for here. That's what we are here to try to preserve. Frustrating, isn't it? But they are becoming irrelevant because now you're seeing the federal government, which has been using these social media platforms as arm's length extensions of government, now they're fighting amongst themselves. And I'm seeing people on all sides even getting banned for a variety of things. These social media platforms have gone ban happy. It isn't even just conservatives anymore. They're going after all kinds of different people for a variety of things. I think it's still mainly conservative and freedom oriented live streams, podcasts, social media influencers that are getting hammered by the censorship police, the thought police, the political police, the online cops. But they're now fighting amongst themselves. I mean, the federal government honestly had a pretty darn good if they had just left well enough alone for them. Well enough for them. But no, they had to keep on pushing. I think it's great. Let them fight. Let this thing fall apart. This is actually bad for the mainstream legacy media. The problem is here, they will come to an agreement. They will work this out. The mainstream legacy media will end up with more money. The social media platforms will continue to thrive. The federal government will step up in some fashion to make sure that nobody suffers who is involved in the agreement. And that's why they're doing these negotiations behind closed doors. They don't want to negotiate in public. Can't tell you what the deal is that we're going to work out with them. That's because there's going to be plenty of money to go all around for them. The platforms like this will get a great big fat goose egg, and that's just fine with me. I don't want the darn money anyway, because I don't want to be compromised. I want to be able to speak what I want to speak. I want to be able to give you guys a platform to say what you want to say as well. That's what we're here for. And I'm not going to go back to where I am working for a big corporate media entity, either directly or indirectly, where they are preventing me entirely from saying what I want to say. I mean, just to be on YouTube, Facebook, and even here tonight on YouTube, there are certain things we're just not allowed to say that I can't say. And so we speak in code over here. You know, it absolutely affects public discourse, public discussion. It's stifling, frustrating, and I would say even depressing. I'm all about free speech and constructive discussion. I mean, there's a limit to everything, of course, but I'm all for freedom. And this is not the way forward. And this is not how you give people better service, better news content, more freedom. This is not what freedom is about. This is, the government of Canada for a long time, all through my life, ever since I've been alive, through their progressive media policies, they have been, I think, very misguided. They don't let the government, or the free market, decide. In Canada, all my life, through radio and television station regulations, Canadian content, CanCon rules, they have forced their will upon the broadcasters, now the online social media companies, and therefore also the people. And in the process of doing that, they are also controlling the information that controls people's minds. Yeah, I'm not holding my breath on this one. I'm not happy about where it is. I'm a little bit optimistic that maybe we'll get a little more free market out of this, and that the mainstream legacy media might end up in a position where they actually have to provide a quality product that's truthful to people so that people will actually watch it again. But I'm not holding my breath. I don't think that's going to happen. The government doesn't want a free independent media. They want a propaganda machine. And that's what they'll get with this. And they want social media to fund it. You're the inventory, the advertising dollars coming in from the big corporations will flow back to the mainstream legacy media that is then controlled through regulations and the appetite for the dollars. It's controlled by the government ultimately. And that's where you get the propaganda. Plenty of propaganda coming out of Ukraine. They've so many people have said, and I've agreed with this, that I said that Ukraine has become a dumping ground for obsolete Western weapons so that we can unload aging military equipment and then rack up a big bill for Ukraine that the Ukrainian people will be on the hook for, and ultimately us too, because we're the guarantors of the loans to the tune of billions and maybe even trillions of dollars over in Ukraine by the time we're done, to buy all of the military equipment. But more than that, and in another way, this is also a testing ground for U.S. military sophisticated weapon systems, high-tech stuff, so that they can determine if the stuff works very well or if at all, and develop new strategies and new operating policies, procedures, methods for these different pieces of equipment that they test. Of course, a lot of people who have been pro-war, pro-Ukraine, there's been denial that goes on. Oh, no, that's not what the war is about. The war is about democracy. The war is about freedom. The war is about helping the Ukrainian people preserve their sovereignty in the face of a tyrannical Putin who wants to take over all of Europe. If we let him get into Ukraine, that'll be the first country, the first domino to fall. Well, now the Ukrainians aren't even hiding what's really going on over there. They've had military briefings now, and they've admitted that Ukraine provides the ideal testing ground for Western weaponry. And I'm not making it up. I keep saying that. I have to tell people that because stuff like this is so hard for some people to believe. And I'm afraid that we're going to get banned off these social media platforms for spreading conspiracy theories. But no, they've actually come right out and said it. And here, I'll show you that these comments are actually getting media attention. Here's the Financial Times. It says Ukraine's defense minister, was meeting U.S. officials when he took a phone call from his commander, turning to his American visitors. Alexei Reznikov said, "I have good news for you. We downed a Kinzhal." The Kinzhal was supposedly a fearsome Russian hypersonic missile, which Vladimir Putin boasted flew so fast it could not be intercepted. But on that day in May, and you may recall that incident, I certainly do, clearly, Ukrainian forces fired a newly acquired Patriot air defense system, one of the most advanced pieces of weaponry supplied so far by the U.S., proving Putin wrong. The war in Ukraine is the first time that NATO weaponry is being used on a large scale against Russia's army after pleas for assistance from President Volodymyr Zelensky, and it is giving Western militaries invaluable insights into the performance of their kit. And so, where are the quotes here to prove that they're actually admitting it? It says, well, Kiev's Western allies, quote, can actually see if their weapons work, how efficiently they work, and if they need to be upgraded, Reznikov said in an interview. He goes on and says, for the military industry of the world, you can't invent a better testing ground. So you see, there is motivation there to use this war to simply test weapons on real human beings that end up dead while they assess the efficacy of these systems. So there it is. I mean, that really is this story in a nutshell. And they've been over there using GPS guided munitions for artillery, a variety of other systems. And they've been testing those Patriot missile systems against those hypersonic missiles used by the Russians. And on that day, it wasn't clear if they really had shot it down. I guess that really happened. So, we were told that the hypersonic missiles were so fast that they could not be intercepted. Well, they tested those Patriot batteries against those missiles, and they say they got at least one, maybe more. Hard to say. I don't know. There's so much propaganda going around. It's really difficult to know what to believe, but I think you can take those comments to the bank, and you can now see that this war on many levels is about money, money, money. It's about testing weapon systems, which, in my view, really bad reason to go to war. But that's the reality. They denied it, and denied it, and now they're admitting it. Okay, let's move on and talk about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is being monitored by closed-circuit television cameras, surveillance cameras, both sides accusing the other, the Ukrainians accusing the Russians accusing the Ukrainians of preparing some sort of attack against that nuclear power plant. Here, I can show you some of the surveillance video. As you can see right there. So we've received reports here that some people living around the facility, which is controlled by the Russians right now, some of the people living around there have been told that they should probably get the heck out of there. That's given rise to concerns that an attack of some kind may be imminent. There's been a lot of talk about that plant being attacked, maybe shelled, and to release radioactive material into the environment around there, cause a radioactive disaster. It seems insane. The Ukrainians saying the Russians want to blow up their own nuclear power plant, which makes no sense to me whatsoever. But the Ukrainians now have cut the power supply or cut the power lines going to that nuclear power facility. And that's giving rise to a lot of concern. It's making people say, oh my goodness, they're getting ready to do something. And of course, we have the big Ukrainian counteroffensive underway right now. How effective it is, who the heck knows? It doesn't matter who you speak to or which analyst you're hearing from. If the guy's on this side, you get one story. If you get the guys on the other side, you get another story. It's very difficult to know. In fact, it's almost impossible because you get a lot of media spin unless you're there, you don't really know. So you have to kind of assess all the information and try to decide what's truth, what's propaganda, what's spin, what's a misunderstanding on the part of one analyst and another. If they maybe don't have all the correct information, I think there's a great deal of speculation that goes on, just as there is speculation going on right now surrounding what might happen with that nuclear power plant. And if there is some sort of attack and there is a breach and there is radioactive contamination, this would signal a massive escalation in the conflict and again take us one step closer to a possible all-out nuclear war. Maybe a full-scale third world war. We just don't know. But it's very clear, unless you have your head in the sand and you are just unwilling to acknowledge reality, that every time we take another step forward and see more escalation, that it absolutely puts the world at risk. I mean, the actual future of the world. This is an existential threat to every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. That's the reality. It's hard to wrap our heads around that, but it's true. And we just have to sit and hope and pray that it doesn't happen, and hope that we get to an election before we get blown up, and that people ultimately make the right decisions and get people in there who will ultimately bring this conflict to an end. It has to happen. Gotta happen. If it doesn't happen, then God help us all, especially when this guy speaks. I mean, here's Volodymyr Zelensky spouting off about this. You decide, is he telling the truth about what's going on with this nuclear power plant? I'll read the captions as he speaks.
Здоров'я, шановні українці,
Out there, Ukraine.
Щойно завершив розмову з паном президентом Франції Макроном. І це вже третій міжнародний.
Macron. Let me just pull the audio down here a bit so that you can hear me while he speaks. And these are the third international negotiations today. After conversations with the NATO Secretary General and the Prime Minister of Sweden, the key is our defense, the frontline weapons, and the capabilities of our soldiers, and I am grateful to our partners for understanding our needs. We've agreed on new defense packages. And by the way, thank you, Emmanuel, for the fact that today the weapons we had agreed on, missiles and tanks, have begun to arrive. But of course, today we also talked about more strategic things, about what will be the security foundation of Europe after this war and our victory, for peace to come sooner and to be lasting, fair, and real. The Russian evil must see the limit we will set for the Kremlin's ambitions. We, all free European nations, all in our Euro-Atlantic community, not Russian terrorists and any of their acts of blackmail and aggression. Every day we are adding content to the NATO summit that will take place in Vilnius next week, and I'm grateful to all our partners who are working with us to strengthen the alliance and thus to ensure security in Europe, real security. Today, in conversations with the President of France, the Prime Minister of Sweden, and the NATO Secretary General, we've coordinated our steps in the run-up to Vilnius. I also held several meetings with government officials and the office's international team to prepare for foreign policy events that will take place in the near future. Very importantly, the situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the whole world must now realize that common security depends entirely on global attention to the actions of the occupiers at the plant. Russia must clearly realize that the world sees what scenarios terrorists are preparing for, and the world is ready to respond. Radiation is a threat to everyone in the world, and the nuclear power plant must be fully protected from any radiation incidents. Today, it is exactly 16 months since the Russian troops have been in full control of the territory and facilities of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Different countries have their own intelligence and other capabilities to know exactly what is going on and who is to blame. Now we have information from our intelligence that the Russian troops have placed objects resembling explosives on the roof of several power units of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Perhaps to simulate an attack on the plant. Perhaps they have some other scenario. But in any case, the world sees but can't see that the only source of danger to the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is Russia and no one else. Unfortunately, there was no timely and large-scale response to the terrorist attack on the Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant, and this may incite the Kremlin to commit new evil. It is the responsibility of everyone in the world to stop it. No one can stand aside as radiation affects everyone. I thank Mr. President Macron for his willingness to the situation at the ZNPP to do everything necessary to ensure safety. One more thing. Today, Russia once again attacked the Kharkiv region, the city of Pervomayaski. Presumably, it was an Iskander missile. 8 ordinary high-rise buildings were damaged. More than 40 people wounded, 12 of them children. 2 of them infants less than a year old. As of now, rescuers and police are still inspecting the damaged buildings. Everyone who is wounded by this missile strike will be provided with all necessary assistance, as well as for all their other strikes. Russian terrorists want to become exemplary in the way they destroy life. We will become exemplary in the way we protect life, and in the way life that then responds justly and inevitably to every blow inflicted to every terrorist. The Nazis tried to hide from justice for a long time, but many of them were found and are still being persecuted or prosecuted. We will catch the Russists much faster. By the way, I will now have a meeting with Interior Minister Klemenko and head of the security service Maverick to discuss new challenges to our security and the overall situation. I also had a meeting with the intelligence today. We know how to put terrorists in their place. I thank all our warriors. Glory to Ukraine. Do you believe him? Do you trust him? Do you think the Russians want to blow up the nuclear power plant that they sacrificed and bled and died for to control? Now they have it. Do you think that they're the ones who have shelled it? Do you think they're the ones that want to blow it up? Does it make any sense to you? Oh, it could be a false flag. Does that make any sense to you at all? That the Russians would want to blow that thing up? I suggest to you that that is not the case. So let's take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to show you a response from Dmitry Polyansky, the UN ambassador from Russia, who has posted a letter that he wrote, some memos stating their position on this. Don't go away.
Fighting the Great Reset by leading the Great Resistance. Maverick News. The antivirus programs for your mind.
The New World Order. Government overreach. The Great Reset. Mainstream media lies. Now more than ever, independent voices are needed. Donate now at freedomreporters.com. That's freedomreporters.com. Maverick News. The antivirus program for your mind.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I think that Dimitri's material is being suppressed to some degree here because I'm having trouble bringing it back up. Hang on a second here while I'm trying to, I had it saved from before. Is this it? Nope, nope, nope. I'll tell you what, let's move on. And I'll try to find it through the broadcast. Bottom line is Dmitry Polyansky, Russian ambassador to the United Nations, sent out some letters, and they've made it clear, the Russian government, that they have concerns about what might happen to that nuclear power plant. They've asked the United Nations to intervene, take steps to prevent anything from, any attacks, to prevent anything bad from happening there. And they're saying unequivocally that they have no interest. They would not. It's not in their best interests to engage in any kind of sabotage, destruction. Why would they blow up their own nuclear power plant? It does not make sense. And they've sent notification to the United Nations in that regard, in writing, and you can decide for yourself one way or another what absolutely makes sense or what seems to make sense. To me, it doesn't make sense for the Russians to blow that thing up. They control it now. They want to keep it. And blowing it up, contaminating the area that they fought for to control, it just defies logic. It makes sense to me strategically why the Ukrainians would want to do it and then blame the Russians. Chases them out, pushes the Russians back. They get a nuclear disaster on their hands, which is further escalation. They call for more support from the West, from other NATO countries, by blaming the Russians, when in fact it's them that did it. That's a scenario that makes a lot more sense to me. And they get more military funding, more military weapons, and it just takes everything to the next level. And then, that gives them more license to go deeper into Russian territory with more drone strikes like the ones that we talked about last night that we all need to be focused on. Take the fight right into Russian territory, right into Russia, right into Moscow with drone strikes. And even though I think that the Ukrainian military is back on its heels in Ukraine itself, they are really poking a finger in Putin's eye every time they strike a blow inside the Russian border. And that puts us all at risk because that puts Putin closer and closer to a position where he's in a corner, back up against the wall, potentially, leaving him no alternatives. Very few. And he's going to be at that point probably looking at that big red button. which is, I think, something that he honestly doesn't want to have to explore, an option he doesn't want to entertain. East Palestine, Ohio. Remember the big train derailment there and all the concerns? And then they set all that stuff on fire, those chemicals, and it resulted in that gigantic, huge, black, almost mushroom cloud that was toxic. And the contamination of the water there and the surrounding lands from all of the effluent. Well, they're still talking about it. It's still an issue, of course, and the media has largely moved on. But there were questions about it today during the White House briefing, and here's what was said.
Thanks. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is asking the president to declare East Palestine a major disaster area after the train derailment. He sent the president a letter on Monday. Is the president considering, and will he fulfill that request?
So I can say this, as it does with all of its requests, FEMA, it will expeditiously review the request, this particular request from the governor of Ohio as well. This is something that we do every time this comes through us. A couple of things I do want to state here as it relates to Norfolk and Southern, to be more specific, it's under a federal order to cover all costs for cleaning up its mess that it did, that they caused in East Palestine. The EPA is making them pay so that the taxpayers don't have to pay for their mess. And so we've been very clear about that. The EPA has been on top of that. And so when it comes to Norfolk Southern, they have met their terms of the order to date, and there are stiff penalties if they do not. And so EPA has been on top of this. And so just don't have anything further. But as we do with every declaration that comes our way, the FEMA's way, when it comes to major disasters, they're going to take a look at this and they'll make a decision.
Why has the president not made the visit out there? And at this point, is he just not going to? He's done a lot of travel in recent weeks and months.
So I'm just going to repeat what the president said. He will travel to the area, to East Palestine. Just don't have anything to share on travel or upcoming dates that he'll be there. But the president said it. He's going to go, so he will go. Once we have a date, we'll certainly share that. Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, thank you. If the Secret Service determines who brought the cocaine into the White House, does the White House support the prosecution of this individual?
I'm just not going to get into hypotheticals from here. Let the Secret Service do their job. It's under their purview. We are confident that they'll get to the bottom of it. I'm just not going to get ahead of this right this time. Okay.
So Secret Service officials are actually cautioning that they might not find the person involved because it is such a busy thoroughfare. So if they don't get to the bottom of it, as you're saying, would the president be satisfied with, sir, this is a busy room and we found some cocaine. We don't know who brought it.
So let's see what the Secret Service says, right? This is under investigation. Don't want to get into hypotheticals while investigation is going on and is happening at this time. Just not going to get ahead of it. Let Secret Service do their job.
And if I work anywhere on the complex, what is the process like for me if I want to bring? Can you just lay out, to the extent that you can, the process for, if I want to bring in family or friends as somebody who works here? Do I go to somebody in the White House? Do I go immediately to the Secret Service and say, hey, I want to do this? Like, how does that work?
So there's a specific process. I'm happy to share that with you. I want to make sure I get it right. So not certainly going to lay that out right at this time, but there is a process, as one of your colleagues mentioned. Everybody does go through a process to come on campus. They do get vetted. They go through a security process. As it relates to the security piece of it, I would have to refer you to Secret Service, but certainly someone from my team can certainly lay out. I think some of you may understand this process, as some of you may not have hard pass and you know how this all works, but I just want to make sure I get this right. So happy to share that with you after the briefing.
Can you preview the trip tomorrow?
Sure. Let's see.
Oh, the cocaine. The cocaine. The big story. They found cocaine. So here's the story. They found cocaine at the White House. The end. Media freaks out. Public pays attention. The end. What's going to come of that? Nothing. Oh, if they find who dropped their bag of Coke. Maybe they'll do something. I don't know, man. Like at the end of the day, does it matter? I don't understand. Except that I understand it's not really a big deal. They're just making a big deal out of it. I mean, okay, cocaine at the White House. I only have one thing I have a question. Where's Hunter?
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Speaking of the White House, one of the guys who wants to occupy the White House and the president's office, Mike Pence. We didn't get to talk about what I'm about to talk about earlier this week. In fact, this happened like 6 days ago, but I do want to mention it now. Did you know that Mike Pence went to Ukraine for a surprise visit with Volodymyr Zelensky? You might not have been aware. That's because Pence's bid for the presidency has challenged Trump to take the nomination on the GOP side, has, I think, really kind of fallen flat. And this surprise visit got some media attention, but I don't think that it generated much in terms of ratings or clicks from the general public. I think it was a ho-hum, oh well, yawn moment. And I think it's an illustration of how Mike Pence is completely out of touch with the Republican base. He doesn't get it. He went to, well, let's see, here's the NBC page depicting the story. Mike Pence meets with Volodymyr Zelensky in surprise trip to Ukraine. In making the unannounced trip, the former vice president became the first GOP presidential candidate to meet with the Ukrainian leader during the campaign. And there he is shaking hands with the man. Pence is going to lose, and he's going to lose bad. He doesn't understand the Republican Party today. Certainly doesn't understand that it's really not the Republican Party at all. It's MAGA country. It's the MAGA party. It absolutely is. Now, DeSantis, he understands a little bit better, but even he's been misfiring since that dumpster fire of a campaign kickoff on Twitter Spaces that was nothing but a technical disaster. Well, Pence has just been sort of so wishy-washy. Maybe that's not the right phrase, but just so ineffective, bland. That's the word. He's been very bland. You know, he's well-spoken, chooses his words carefully, doesn't make too many mistakes in terms of staying on message and not, no faux pas to speak of. He's very good at that. But on the issue like this, on the issues and on this one in particular, I think he's off base. He doesn't understand that the base of the Republican Party is not supportive of the war, and they're not supportive of sending more money and weapons to Ukraine. But there he is shaking hands with Volodymyr Zelensky, and he has made his support for Ukraine very, very clear. And I think what he's doing here is he is signaling to the neocons within the GOP, to the hardliners, to the hawks. He's saying, I'm your man. In that way, he may be dangerous because they may employ strategies to propel him into a much better position as he seeks the nomination. But I think that overall, he's just in a whole lot of trouble and he's on the wrong course and he doesn't get it. And I think it was actually disrespectful of him to even run against Trump. But of course, they've had that falling out since J6, where he didn't step up and do what Trump really wanted him to do. So the two have gone their separate ways, representing a real divide within the GOP. But it's not much of a divide because you can see that the bulk of the support still goes to Trump. As he said before, he could stand in the middle of the street and shoot someone and he wouldn't lose any supporters. And that's been pretty much the case. Some erosion in support, but not to the degree that I think that he's threatened at this point in losing the nomination. And it is his to lose, not Mike Pence's or anyone else's to win. Donald Trump is going to have to screw up, or there's going to have to be something catastrophic that happens to him in order for his base to pull away and throw their support behind a different candidate, for everything to unravel. I can't see it happening, honestly. The indictments have only served to strengthen Trump. And I think when Pence goes to Ukraine like this, it actually further strengthens Trump, because I think that the peace movement, such as it is, the modern peace movement, has found a home in MAGA country and among Kennedy Democrats. And there's dovetailing there. It's a populist thing. And the populist movement has grown into something that really needs to be taken seriously. They are a force to be reckoned with. Mike Pence is not there. Doesn't have a bead on that. He says here, this is about helping a country that is willing to defend the fundamental core values on which the United States as a whole is built, he added. Well, that may be true, and that's unfortunate. Because I think we've seen, especially in recent years, what the U.S. foreign policy is really all about. It's about expansionism and globalism. The future of U.S. support, it says here, for the Ukrainian war effort is in question, and the voters Pence is trying to woo in the Republican primary aren't eager to aid the country. In the latest NBC News national poll, 52% of GOP primary voters said they would be less likely to back a candidate who supports sending more funding and weapons to Ukraine, while just 28% said they would be more likely. Quote, I'm here because it's important that the American people understand the progress that we've made and how support for the Ukrainian military has been in our national interest, Pence said. I truly do believe that now more than ever, we need leaders in our country who will articulate the importance of American leadership in the world. This is old school neocon narrative, man. And not even just neocon. I mean, it's just warmonger rhetoric. That's Pence. Freed up because no longer aligned with Trump to say what he really thinks, or maybe just to say what he thinks he has to say in order to get the nomination, because he is a true politician through and through. You could see that from the beginning. He's always been that way. Carefully chosen words, very polished presentations, cliches, sticks to the script, tells voters what they want to hear or thinks that he wants to hear. And not just that, but he's very strategic. He knows he can't get the MAGA base to come and support him, so he's gone the other way. And he's seeking the support of those who oppose Trump, the never-Trumpers. And he's hoping for something. We'll see. Mike Pence. I thought he was a good guy. But in the end, he really didn't deliver for Trump, did he? He kind of let him down. And people can see that. And some people think, well, he did the right thing. Those people around him. But what I'm seeing right now is a true politician. Willing, ready, and actually engaging in political activity, just political posturing, positioning, doing what he has to do to gain the support that he needs to get the power that he wants. And I think ultimately that's what it's about. It's not about conviction for Mike Pence. It's not about doing what he thinks is actually right. It's not even really about doing the right thing. It's about doing whatever he has to do to get his hands on the power, to get the power. He was quite willing to be Trump's VP and do and say anything that Trump asked of him for a while, till he got to the end and just couldn't stand the heat, I think. Some people would say, oh, no, he stood up and did what he thought was right. No, you know what I think it was? I think he was just darn scared because he knew it took a lot of guts. It took real steel in the spine to stand up and say, I'm going to stick with Trump no matter what. I'm his VP. I'm loyal to the guy. I'm grateful. I'm indebted. He brought me along from a no-name politician to the vice presidency. I owe him everything, and I'm going to stick with him until the end. Didn't do that. And so now, if you really look at where he stands in some of these positions, he's flip-flopped. Mike Pence has proven to me that he's not a man of conviction. He's an opportunist. He is a politician.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so sharks. Shark attack. Multiple shark attacks reported off New York shores. 50 sharks spotted at one beach. You know where this is going, right? Do I even have to say it for you? CC. First word starts with a C. The second word starts with a C. The first word is climate. Second word is what? That's what they're going to say. In fact, they said it before this. This is what they said before these shark sightings. Here we go. Let's take a look. Okay. Multiple shark attacks reported off New York shores. 50 sharks spotted at one beach. This is CBS, their version of the story. Yeah. Outbreak of shark attacks. It's a pandemic of fins in the water. That's a serious thing, obviously. Scary to the people at the beach. You can see those dark, look at the fins right there. One down in Florida, too. Says 2 swimmers were apparently attacked by sharks off the shores of Long Island. This was yesterday, a day after 2 others reported being attacked while enjoying the water at popular New York beaches. So now one of those beaches delayed opening to holiday revelers. This was on Tuesday, after officials said drones spotted some 50 sand sharks near a popular beach park. So, this is something that had a lot of people freaking out. They closed some of these beaches. It's not the first time we've seen this. Earlier this week on Monday, there was a 15-year-old girl who was treated for an apparent shark bite to a leg. I can't imagine how terrifying that would be. It would scare the crap out of me. And I hope she's okay. And there's a lot of speculation as to why you see all these sharks now near these beaches, but it is unusual to see them there. But I'll tell you this, I've been waiting, and I think it's coming. I'm surprised we haven't heard it more in this term so far, but yeah, climate change. Blame it on climate change. Well, you know what? I was looking in the wrong direction. All you had to do is do this and look backward. Look at this story. This is CBS. Shark sightings off New York's coast are linked to climate change, scientists say. See, the thing is, though, this story is from July 29th, 2021, a couple of years ago. Climate change may drive sharks to northern shores. Repeated shark sightings off New York's Atlantic coastline are causing concerns this summer, especially after another sighting at Long Island's popular Jones Beach State Park Thursday morning. Scientists say warming waters caused by climate change are helping to drive the sharks farther north. So this was 2 years ago, 2 summers ago. It doesn't matter what happens anymore. It's climate change. It's always climate change. Experts stress the need to continue to learn more about shark habitats and migration patterns, especially as they're now being impacted by climate change. And while shark attacks are rare, it says, officials say vigilance for beachgoers is always important. Yeah, no kidding. And they had some expert here. Chris Paparo of the South Fork National History Museum Shark Research Team captured a video of sharks feeding on huge schools of fish off Southampton, New York. Paparo's team tagged sharks to collect data on their patterns. And he says here, climate change is definitely playing a role. Oh, definitely. Especially in the sightings we're seeing this year and last year. Is it climate change? How do they come to that conclusion? What's the study actually say? Maybe the sharks were just looking for lunch and they saw some rather tasty humans splashing in the water and heard them. Could be other things, maybe. Climate change. It's always climate change. If there were no sharks, they would say it's climate change. It's always climate change. And in fact, they're saying global warming, aren't they? Now they're saying the global warming thing. But when it's cold, they say that's climate change now too. So I don't know, man. I just find it hard to keep up and hard to know what to believe anymore. I just don't buy it so easily. I'm just not that quick to be convinced of these things. What else do I have? I have a poem for you. A friend of mine wrote this while watching fireworks on July 4th, yesterday. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going to share something very special with you. Do not go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I'm back. And before we get into the poem thing, just a couple of other things. Let's update this story on the Stellantis electric battery factory deal. So as I said, this on again, off again electric vehicle battery facility that they were constructing in Windsor is back on again because Stellantis and the federal government of Canada has reached a deal on the battery plant construction. So Stellantis and LG Energy Solution have issued a statement saying construction of their plant called Nexstar Energy is going to resume immediately. They do now have a binding financing deal with the government of Ontario as well as Justin Trudeau's federal government. The union, Unifor, represents the workers at the Stellantis facilities in Windsor. And they also have issued a statement saying that they knew the stakes were high. They knew that the commitments had to be kept because the alternative would have been unthinkable for so many workers. That, according to Lana Payne, Unifor's national president. In another statement, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Industry, Francois-Philippe Champagne, have also confirmed that the agreement is official. And in this statement, it is said, this agreement is good for workers and it is good for Canada. It will create and secure thousands of jobs, both in the auto sector and in related industries across Canada, and will further solidify Canada's place as a leader in the global electric vehicle supply chain. This coming from the government officials. And so what is this deal? Well, Stellantis and LG Energy, they had agreed to build a $5 billion battery plant. But they stopped construction back in May because they wanted to negotiate with the government because of renegotiate funding in order to match what the United States would offer through its Inflation Reduction Act. Aha, you see, slippery slope when you start offering government money. And therein lies the problem. It's like, well, we can get more money from this government. We'll go south of the border. We'll go to this state, or we'll go to this different province. So now you have governments competing with each other to buy jobs. They're buying your jobs. They're paying someone to employ you. The act includes production subsidies for clean technology, including EV batteries, this act that they have come up with down in the US. And it led to a deal between Canada and Volkswagen that provides up to $13 billion for a gigafactory just up the highway in St. Thomas, Ontario. So you see, Volkswagen got a better deal. Stellantis saw it. This is what I said. Stellantis saw that they got a deal for a $5 billion battery plant. VW got $13 billion, and they're only about 2.5 hours up the highway in St. Thomas, Ontario, in Canada. Also on, the Highway 401, which allows them to ship batteries straight into the States if they need to. And They're all in that sort of hub of activity where the supply chain depends on that highway and the rail systems and the Great Lakes for shipping. So Stellantis was calling on the Canadian government to keep its commitments with the original deal that they had, apparently, which would have seen Ontario and Canada contribute $500 million each toward the capital costs of the plant. There's other money too. And so we're trying to see here exactly what the deal is. And I think there's still other details yet to come out of this. We don't know all of the particulars with regard to this, but they have reached an agreement. So the plant will be built. And all the auto companies continue to line up for these subsidies, tax breaks, handouts for this corporate welfare that we're all ultimately going to be paying for generations to come, in my opinion. And even though they say there are economic linkages and force multipliers for each dollar invested, I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach that all of this is leading to a situation where the outcome will not be exactly what they are promising. It's all fine right now when the money that came off the credit card is being spent. But sometime, some way, somewhere down the future, that bill has to be paid. And if you don't get enough production and enough profit out of that, enough productivity out of those plants to cover those bills, then we're all on the hook. You see? Dangerous. Henry Ford didn't build his empire and take the assembly line to a whole new level and transform American production and carry society into the industrial age by using and indebting taxpayers. He did it with innovation and a freer market at the time. But I digress. Yesterday, didn't comment on this. I was going to, and I thought, I'm not going to do it. It's just a lot of hype. But how can I ignore all these headlines saying that the Earth is breaking temperature records due to global warming? Oh, see, it was so hot yesterday, they've reverted back from climate change to global warming. And now they're saying that the Earth experienced its hottest day ever recorded in human history yesterday. Oh my God. The Earth is on fire. Yes, the Earth is on fire. What am I talking about? You remember the movie back in the 1960s? The Day the Earth Caught Fire? Here, let me show you. People have been thinking about this stuff for forever and a day. This is 1961. The greatest news story ever told. The Day the Earth Caught Fire, with Janet Monroe, Leo McKern, and Edward Judd. Science fiction thriller. Pretty good movie, actually. Very entertaining. This notion that the Earth got so hot that it actually caught fire. Ah, run for your lives. Climate change. The idea of a global environmental climate apocalypse has been with us for a long time. And yesterday, the Earth was almost on fire because the average global temperature reached its highest level in recorded human history. Can you believe it? Well, you'll have to decide if you believe it or not for yourself. Let me just take a look here. So, global temperatures smashed through records this week. This is a mainstream media report from Bloomberg. underscoring the dangers of ever-increasing greenhouse gas emissions generated from burning fossil fuels. So they're saying that the average worldwide temperature reached 17 Celsius, or 63 degrees Fahrenheit, this week, just above the previous record of 16.9 degrees Celsius in August 2016, according to data from the National Centers for Environmental Prediction. And the threshold only lasted a day, because then on Tuesday, the average temperature hit 17.2 degrees Celsius. So they're saying these new highs illustrate the extremity of 2023 summer in the Northern Hemisphere and brings into focus the slow pace of global progress on curbing emissions. So there's this dude, Frederic Otto, a senior lecturer at the Grantham Institute for Climate Change and the Environment, where I'm sure they get a lot of government grants. And he says, quote, "It's a death sentence for people and ecosystems." Dun, 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 dun. We're all going to die. This article says the heat this summer has already put millions of people around the world at risk. China is experiencing a scorching new heat wave less than 2 weeks after temperatures broke records in Beijing. Extreme heat in India last month has been linked to deaths in some of its poorest regions. Last week saw a dangerous heat dome cover Texas and northern Mexico, while the UK baked in its hottest June on record. El Nino conditions have developed in the tropical Pacific for the first time in 7 years and will trigger a surge in temperatures. According to the World Meteorological Organization, the onset of El Nino will greatly increase the likelihood of breaking temperature records, WMO Secretary General Petteri Talas said in a Tuesday statement. It's likely the world will exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming in the near term, with efforts on climate action still insufficient, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said in March in a report summarizing 5 years of its own research. Well, as long as they agree with themselves, we have to believe them. Because if they say it and then confirm it and then agree with what they've said and confirmed, then it must be true. Global greenhouse gas emissions need to be cut by 60% below 2019 levels by 2035, according to their report, which, of course, we know they confirmed and agreed with, so therefore it must be done. And climate-related risks are rising with every increment of warming. So what's this quote say? Oh, it says, our world needs climate action on all fronts, everything, everywhere, all at once. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said in a statement at the time. Guterres has urged nations to rapidly accelerate plans to phase out the use of fossil fuels, everything, all at once, everywhere, all the time. And I'm not making that quote up. That's what he said. Everything, everywhere, all at once, on all fronts, action. In other words, no more cars, no more flying, no more heating your house, don't cook your food, just don't burn anything. It says here, any failure to achieve progress that significantly boosts the prospects for holding the global average temperature below 1.5 degrees of warming could see some countries, particularly vulnerable small island states, start to question the multilateral climate process. We're just not being serious enough, and we're just not sensitive enough to the needs of these tiny little island states in the middle of nowhere that are so vulnerable to climate change. It was a hot day today. My dog was panting. I, too, found it kind of warm out. Every day. Climate change. Oh, it's the sharks. Climate change. Dogs panting. Climate change. Dogs getting more vicious. They're losing their minds. It's driving the dogs mad. Soon they will eat your brains. Because the world is on fire. . '
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Blue skies and nothing but blue skies. That's all I saw today when I was outside. It wasn't raining. I went for a walk-in with my doggo, and he was panting by my side. And then my friend Jessica, who I haven't seen for a long time, Miss Jessica, she wrote this during the 4th of July fireworks. She's living down there in California someplace, land of the cement ponds and the Beverly Hillbillies, and drones and high-tech stuff and Nancy Pelosi and all them liberals suffering from their mental disorders. And she wrote this beautiful passage that she happened to send to me. But on Facebook, before I got banned and the Maverick News platform got banned and everything that I do on Facebook got banned, something beautiful was sent to me, and I want to share it with you tonight. I asked her if I could do this, and she said yes. And so I appreciate it. The 247th solar turn. And this is a passage that will spark mixed emotions within all of us tonight. The space is dark. Distant fireworks boom. An occasional yell or eruptions of laughter intrudes the dark room. On this 4th of July night, the crowds dulled by spirits, vodka, rum, whiskey, the glittering skies, the boats, the booze, facading the true reality. The country is due for a rebirth, looming closely, challenging normality. Onlookers applaud and holler as fireworks illuminate the water, dancing, embracing, toasting. The air filled with warmth from the day prior. Fireworks symphony drowns muted dismay. Despite the laughter and cheer, it is apparent the nation's transformation is near. Yet in this twilight's allure, hearts remain grateful for the beauty, love's sweet refrain. The times they are changing. Thank you, Jessica. Miss you. I'll be back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, folks. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.